So as you can see, that's all meshed together. We can see them here. And the voxel size is something really tiny, so be careful. It's 0.003. And then I've converted these all back to polygons. I've added a normal. And then over here is our null going to our opaque crystals out. And if we jump up here, you can see our opaque crystals, which I have filed cached out, which we'll get to in a sec. So object merge them into this object, file cache them out, and added some attribute noise just so we can get some more color variation. This is once again all into your preference. And this attribute noise here is actually just a copy paste onto all of them if you see these in any other object level SOPs here. So diving back in, let's get to our big chunky crystals. And go back up here. So we have our attribute noise, which is pretty normal. We've scattered some points, and there's about 4,000 points that are settled on the density attribute CAD. And then we have added a pop net. And this is one part where it can get a little bit confusing, so stick with me. If we go to our source first input, we've added a life expectancy of 1. And we only want it emitting on the first frame, so we've got $F equals 1, 1. And we want it on all points. So if we play it back, you can see it's only emitting on frame 1. At pop winds, we've got an amplitude of 0.6 and a swirl size of 0.7. Pop attracts, force scale of 0.8. And the goal really hasn't changed. So what the pop attract is doing is just sucking them into the center at 0, 0. And then I've added some gravity, which is negative 0.2. And we've added a substep of 2 up here. And our pop solver, everything's normal. We've trailed these particles for a 14 and time shifted them to frame 22. Attribute wrangle is the exact same as the attribute wrangle over here. And the attribute randomize is a little bit bigger. And it's 0.041. And we've copied this to points with a Platonic Solid, which looks like an isohedron, and converted it to polygons. And the only reason I'm doing that on our Platonic Solids is that they are actually considered under our tab menu here as a primitive, and I want to make sure Houdini handles them as a polygon, so not a packed primitive. We've converted this to a VBD from polygons, which is 0.005, so we get some detail, and they're all chunky boys together. And we've converted them to polygons. Then we've once again added a null, clear inner crystals out, which is being projected up here to our clear inner crystals on the surface level here. So if we dive inside, we've got our object merge, bringing things in. We filed cache them out. We have an attribute noise, which is essentially the same, and a normal to make sure all the normals are correct. And that's pretty much it for modeling it. I did add a few more area lights for this selective shot because we want some reflections in our crystals. So on top of the regular lights, there is an area light that I've renamed. The color is this. I've currently turned it off because I didn't really need it in the other setup. But the color is this, and the intensity is 0.4, and it's transformed to this. The area light over here, if we enable it, is pure white and transformed to this position. Same here goes with the camera. So let's get into the rendering and also the materials. So for the opaque crystals, we have a glass shader, which I've renamed, as well as the inner crystals here, so they share a different shader. The outer shell is an outer shell clay shader, and the inner shell is also a clay shader as well, so we'll cover those right now. We'll talk about the inner and outer shells because I think those will be easier to remember right away. So for the inner shell right here, we have a base color of this yellowy color, and the IOR hasn't changed. The roughness is 0.3, reflectivity is 0.5, and these are the general changes to them. I haven't changed any of the opacity or the displacement. If we move on to the clay outer shell, we have a base color that's a little bit darker. We have an IOR of 1.1, a roughness of 0.3, a reflectivity of 0.3, coat roughness of 0.2, and these are the general changes that were made. For the displacement, I've turned on noise, enable noise displacement, so there is an amplitude of 0.2 and a frequency of 23, 13, and 10. So we look at our smaller crystals here. We have an opacity color that's a little bit darker, and you can see that it's dialed down here. Our IOR is a little bit more shiny. It's 1.8. Reflectivity tint is 0.3. Reflectivity is 1. Transmission color is yellow, and the transmissioncy is 110.865. The transparency has been pushed down to 0.9, and we've given it a surface priority. And the subsurface color here is a little bit more yellow, and we've also given it a sheen of 0.4. And that's pretty much it. For the inner crystals, which are our big boys right here, our base color is actually a pinky kind of color, and we've changed it to these values as you can see here. The IOR is a 1.8, reflectivity is a 1, transparency is a 1, transmission color is yellow, white, as well as the subsurface color, and the surface priority is 2. And everything else we haven't really changed, and the opacity is still 1. And that's pretty much it for the materials. So turning that all off, we'll move on to our next topic, which is a Herkimer Diamond. This is probably the most easiest out of all of them because it is a crystal, and crystals are fairly easy to replicate inside of Houdini. So going back to our Herkimer Diamond crystal, so this is very interesting for diamonds because it is special in the sense that it's got about 2 points on either ends and is very geometric, and you don't really see too many of them because they're found in Afghanistan and very hard to reach locations. So you can see you'll either find them in the US, Afghanistan, Ukraine, Norway, China, and these are some different shapes you can get of them, which are very interesting, and you can try and replicate by yourself. So turning this on, I've also added a ground in this setup because it's, for diamonds, it's way easier if you have a reflective background to get them right, just so they have enough reflections inside of them. I'm going to go over here. So in this picture, it's very low res, and I probably could have added more reflections, but this is what you can do for the Herkimer Diamonds. And the reason I've added a background is so you can see where the planes are reflecting. You can even make the normals on the actual geometry sharper, which is what I would do if I had to go back and redo this again. So here we have our camera. These are the translations if you wanted to copy them. The ground, if we dive inside here, is a grid that I've bended upwards. So it's got a bend of 90, and that's pretty much it. So the capture direction is 1 in the y-axis. For the Herkimer Diamond, this is where the fun part in modeling gets started. Okay, so inside our Herkimer Diamond, we've started with a tube. In this tube, we've turned down the columns to 6, and our height to 1, and our rows to 2. We won't really need a lot, and we've turned this into a polygon. We've transformed this on its side, And we've grouped our edges here, and you can do that by clicking your arrow, selecting your edges, and you can select your edges like this by clicking. I'm going to tab, writing group, and just clicking group, and Houdini will automatically add an edge group for you, and you should be good to go. So I've renamed this edge group over here edge right, and if we spin around in our scene, we can go over here, and for the edge group over here, you can see that this is edge group left. We poly extruded edge group left over here, so just selecting edge left, and is outputting a side group called extrude side left, which the original, if you revert to default, it's actually called extrude side, but I didn't want anything overlapping, so I renamed them. Over here for poly extrude 4, we have it's selecting edge right, and it's exporting its side group as extrude side right. We've added another group, which is right 2, which is once again selecting the edges on this side, and this left 2 is selecting on this side. And you can create these groups by once again going over here to your edge tools, going up here, selecting your edges, and just clicking on the edges you would like to group. So I've transformed the edge over here inward and had this transforming group left 2, so you can see the translations on this here. And I've copy pasted this one down here to pretty much the same thing. But the only difference is that it's selecting right 2 group. I've poly extruded this one out. So it's looking at group left 2, and if you scroll down here, it's exporting side group left, which I renamed left, and the original one was called extrude side. Poly extruded the other side as well, so this was a copy paste of the one previously of poly extrude 5, but it's selecting group right 2 and exporting the side group right. We bent this side, so this bend sop is running over group right, and this bend sop over here is running over group left. So once again, they are copy and pastes of each other, but they have a capture length, both have a capture length of 1.15 and a squish of 2.2 and a squish pivot of 0.5 and a taper of 0. After this, it's important to fuse your points together so none of your points on your edges here overlap. So if you look here with the fuse on, there's only one point at the end here. If we go to our bend and zoom in and zoom in, there will be actual overlapping points. And I've added normal to this. And that was pretty much how to model a Herkimer Diamond, which is pretty simple. So we'll cover some materials, and I'll go back to my camera. Let me take a look at the materials. So we have a glass Herkimer Diamonds material, and a ground, which is a cloth default ground material. So if we go over here, for the cloth ground, the base color is this blue color, and the roughness is 1, reflectivity is 1, and the transmission color didn't really change. The sheen is lowered a little bit. If we go to glass over here, to Herkimer Diamond, the base color is just below 1, so it's a 0.886. Roughness is turned off, reflectivity is 1, transmission color is a bluey color, transparency is a 1, subsurface color is a little yellow, and those are pretty much the changes made on that one. So we'll turn this off and get down to our final rock, which is actually a mixture of 2 rocks that I wanted to cover. So for our fluorescent mineral, so going back here, back to our fluorescent mineral, we have some interesting things. So fluorite is primarily the main mineral that makes fluorescent minerals glow so well. So fluorite, fluorescent, that's kind of where the name comes from. So if we scroll down here, they are illuminated with specific wavelengths of UV light, X-rays, and cathode rays. And essentially what makes them glow is their electrons moving in and out of place due to the light. So they're switching orbits, and that's pretty much what makes them fluorescent. And you can tell they're a little bit boring when they're polished, but I found a way around that. That kind of makes it look kind of cool. And if you were to do a fluorescent geode, you could probably use the geode setup that we talked about earlier, and you can make glow like this with the different layers of materials that we talked about. So diving right back into our setup, we have an intersect stone and a triangle inside, and we'll talk about those very quickly. But here's our camera setup and where it's translated to if you wanted to use it. So we'll dive inside. So I've started with a basic sphere. Now where is my flag? There we go. So I've started with a basic sphere, and you can see it's very simple. It's not too boring. And it's placed on this side. It's got a frequency of 15. I've added a mountain, and this is optional, but if you smooth it out, you get a very flat surface and a very polished surface. So you could say it's a bumpy rock and I've polished it out, and this is what it would look like. You could also dial this in depending on what you wanted. So here's our base rock out. And then here's where it gets a little bit tricky, because there are actually two different booleans going on. So the boolean down here is actually on a operation subtract, A from B. And what this is doing, it's going out to our out intersect stone, which is on our surface. So before we do anything, we're going to talk about the setups over here, which is our line, which is actually going through our original object on our stone. So you can see its placement is going right here. The attribute randomize over here is a p-scale on the points. So it's got a min value of 0.07 and a max value of 0.2. Over here we have a Platonic Solid, which is a triangle or tetrahedron. Transforms, so we got some elongitude type of shape. And we've remeshed it, so we have more faces. Now this is optional. You can add a mountain top to make it more noisy, or you can leave it off. And I'll show you in a quick second which one looks like which. So here we go. So the rock up here is with the mountain noise turned on the triangle, so you have more refraction going on and a lot more distortion. And over here is if you've got a polished rock with no distortion on the inner plates, and you've just got some triangles. So you've got some layering going on, which is really cool. So I'll leave that option up to you, but essentially they're the same rock. So this is converted back into a polygon and copied to points. So now we have our triangles on our line, and I've just added a null here that says out triangles for both our booleans. So over here we have a boolean that is taking our triangles and just cutting holes in our geometry, so you can see it's subtracting the triangles from A and B. And this is going out to intersect stone. And our boolean over here is doing kind of the reverse of that, where it's taking our triangles and subtracting it from our rock. So we have an intersect thing going on, and it's also capped them off for us. And we have an out triangle inside. So if you jump up here inside the intersect stone, it's taking this one. And then if we go to a triangle out inside, it's taking these triangles. And the reason I chose to do this is because you need that glowing effect coming from inside your rock. So the glowing plate or material is being placed on the triangles, and the regular stone is just a rough glass shader. So going to our material asset, we can go to our glow triangle, and we can see that the glow color is blue. Ramp here is not quite 10, so it's a 9.78, and the emission is 2. Intersect stone which is right here. The base color is blue. The IOR is 3. Roughness is 0.1. Transparency is 1. The transmission color is blue. So surface color is kind of like an aquamarine blue. And those are the changes here. For the opacity, it's a blue. And the fake caustics is enabled. And that's pretty much all you need to do for these rocks. And overall, they look pretty good. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I'm sorry it was fast, but that's all I could do in between tutorials and filming, and also working on the tutorial series that is coming up if you haven't checked that out. Currently I'm building a tutorial series on how to create concealed entities in the universe, which will be coming out over a period of months, as each topic is hard to create in Houdini and are quite complex. So if you know a lot of Houdini or are interested in how science meets Houdini, that might be the series for you, so look out for that. And my name is Kate, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!